Hey guys, in this video, we're gonna go over the Shakatu Surety event and see which items are most worth it to trade them in for. Even if you log in every single day and do all the events, you may not be able to completely buy out the store if you don't grind as much or get unlucky with the treasure chests. It's gonna be really important for us to see which items to prioritize, especially for those who may miss a couple of days of Shakatu's sureties. After that, we'll of course talk about the other part of the 200 Seals of Shakatu event. The Shakatu Surety event is pretty basic. It runs from November 8th to December 4th, and you get 10 sureties a day for logging in, and 10 additional sureties for playing 60 minutes, for a total of 20 sureties a day. During the weekends on Saturdays and Sundays, those sureties double for a total of 40 sureties a day. In total, if you log in and play/AFK for 1 hour a day, you'll get 700 total sureties by the end of the event. You can also get Afuwaru's treasure chests that drop Shakatu sureties while grinding during the event. However, these are a little more rare and some people don't grind as much. The Afuwaru's event will only run from November 7th to November 21st. You can use these Shakatu sureties to trade in for items in the event shop, which range from 200 Advice of Valk stacks or 100 Radiant Shakatu seals to most of the RNG Shakatu boxes. However, with that being said, the big issue of the event pops up. If you don't get the maximum 700 Shakatu sureties from logging in, and don't get many of the Afuwaru's chests, you won't be able to buy all the items in the event store. You need 886 sureties to buy everything. Some people would also want to prioritize getting all 100 Radiant Shakatu seals for the Shining Knight title, which would cost a total of 500 sureties for 100 seals, leaving only 200 sureties left for the other items. In this case, they would be even more strapped for sureties, and knowing which items are the best to trade in for would help them a lot. In the next part of this video, what we'll be doing is valuing each of these items in terms of silver, and seeing what the silver per Shakatu surety is per item, which allows a more definitive way to determine the best trade-in. After that, we'll mention other things that may influence your trade-ins that aren't based purely on silver, like getting the 100 Radiant Shakatu seals for the Shining Knight title. The first thing we'll look at are the items on the top that have no RNG tied to them, which are gonna be your 200, 150, and 120 stacks, along with your premium outfit box, noble stature chest, and Shakatu seals. The value we tied to stacks is gonna be a more conservative lower end estimate, being 6.3 billion silver for a 200 stack, 1.6 billion silver for a 150 stack, and 800 million silver for a 120 stack. Larger stacks have been given out more and more often during events, and it's definitely easier to get higher level stacks compared to what it once was. That being said, if you make your own stacks and enhance a lot, use your own silver estimate for these trade-ins, as the price of stacks can vary quite a lot in between players. There are a lot of players who may not enhance as efficiently, and for those people, stacks are going to be a lot cheaper like the prices listed here. The premium outfit box is valued at 2.17 billion silver, since that's the price you can pre-order them on the central market. If you are on a server which doesn't sell outfits as frequently, this outfit may be worth slightly more for you. That being said though, you can only get 993 crons from an outfit, and crons at max price are gonna be 3 million silver from the blacksmith, so just use your own judgment on what you value them. For people on the NA servers though, outfits are really easy to pre-order, so this would definitely be a max of 2.17 billion silver. Moving on, the Noble Stature chests gives a guaranteed amount of horse training items. Most of these items can be sold on the central market or to an NPC, so we simply price those items at the central market or NPC price. Of course, if you do plan on selling these items to the central market, there will be tax, so the value of these items may be slightly less than compared to items you're going to keep. However, there are some items like the Flowers of Oblivion and Royal Fern Root that don't have explicit values tied to them but can still be extremely useful for some people that are going for T10 horses. Without those items included, the total value of 347.5 million silver will be the minimum pre-tax silver value for people who are just gonna dump these items onto the central market. Finally, we have the Radiant Shakatu seals, which I priced at 31.8 million silver each. The reason for this is because you are able to trade in 100 seals for a 3.18 billion life skill accessory. With that being said, there are still some better value items you would prefer in the trade-in depending on how you play the game. You can also save 300 to get a title, but that isn't really worth any silver, so it would be difficult to tie a price to that. The 3.18 billion silver is simply one of the easiest and no RNG trade-ins that you can do, which is why each individual seal is priced at 31.8 million silver. Looking at these guaranteed items, it's pretty easy to see how valuing is gonna work. We simply have the item and assign our best guess silver value to each item. We then divide that silver by the amount of Shakatu sureties. Since the 200 Advice of Valk stack only costs 1 surety, we divide 6.3 billion by 1, and the end result is that the 200 stack is 6.3 billions per surety. However, with the premium outfit box, because it costs 50 sureties, we have to divide its price of 2.17 billion silver by 50, and in the end, it's only worth 43.4 million silver per surety. Now that we know how this works, moving on to the next items, these are going to be a lot more difficult to value, as most of them are RNG boxes that give random items. To value these boxes, we simply need to find the rate of obtaining each item and the silver value of each item, multiply those together to get the contribution that each item gives to the overall value of the RNG box. After we sum up all the contributions, we would be able to get the total value of the RNG box, also known as the average amount of silver you can expect to get when you open one of these boxes. That silver value would be the value we put for each of these boxes. The big caveat though is that for some of these newer RNG boxes, we don't have an explicit rate of all these items since PA has stopped releasing rates for some of the non-Pearl event-only RNG boxes. Because of this, we have to make a best guess on the value of those unknown boxes. Even though we aren't going to be doing anything crazy like looking at tea leaves, these valuing methods for unknown boxes will be less purely based on math and more on inference. Other than the unknown boxes, some of these RNG boxes do have explicit rates released by PA, so we can get a pretty good guess on the silver value of the old RNG boxes. Starting with one of the RNG boxes that we used to have the rates for, we have the Shakatu Splendid box. This box's rates used to be publicly available on the Black Desert Online website, and we did make a video about that in the past. That being said though, since PA has removed a bunch of the non-Pearl RNG boxes from the website, it is theoretically possible that PA has changed some of the rates of the items in this box in the past couple of patches, however unlikely. That being said though, we are going to be going off the old released rates, so that is still going to be the best guess that we can go off of. So, moving on to how we explicitly value the Shakatu's Resplendent box, we simply took the old rates supplied, multiplied that by the current silver price of all of these items on the central market, and then got the contribution each chance of getting an item gives to the overall value of the Shakatu's Resplendent box. After summing together all the contributions, we can get the real value of the RNG box, also known as the average amount of silver you can expect when you open these boxes. Of course, since this is an RNG box, you will almost always get either more or less than the average silver, but this is just what they all will average down to in an infinite amount of opens. The weird quirk about the Shakatu's Resplendent box is that you can get 3 different boxes. You have a 65% chance of getting a Shakatu's Chest of Luxuries, a 34.8% chance of getting a Shakatu's Chest of Rarities, and a 0.15% chance of getting a Chest of Shinies. The way we overcame this quirk is by valuing each chest individually, then multiplying those chests by the chance of getting them from the Shakatu's Resplendent box to get the average amount of silver you can get when you open the Shakatu's Resplendent box. If you want to know more about the calculations, you can look at my older video, though the silver values will be different since the market has changed a lot since then. In conclusion though, after all of our calculations, we can see that the total expected silver you can get from this chest is 344 million silver. With that number, we simply input it into the silver value of this chest and also get the silver per surety. This value makes sense since on release, this box cost 500 million silver to buy and averaged around slightly more than 500 million silver value. However, since accessories and a bunch of items have lowered in value by quite a lot since then, it is no surprise that the value is now closer to 350 million silver per box. Moving on to the other older boxes, we have the Shakatu Shining Box of Life, Combat, and Mystery Box. These boxes also used to have the rates on the BDO website. We also have some community data that we can use to extrapolate the expected rates on some websites such as BDOlytics and BDO Codex. We will go more in depth on how we calculated these rates in another video, but for now the most important part is the actual chance is the rate of getting each item, and we multiply that by the total silver to get the contributions, and sum up the contributions to get the total average silver you can expect from these boxes. As we can see, the Life box is a lot more silver on average, since it gives around 78 million silver with the current central market prices. The Combat box, on the other hand, only gives about 39 million silver on average. This makes sense since more than 50% of the time, you're getting 18 Kashira stones from the Combat box, and that is worth a lot less than the 50% chance of getting 25 memory fragments from the Life box. With that being said though, if the price of memory fragments or Kashiras changes in the future, this will also change the value of the box quite drastically. The overall value of these boxes, 39 to 78 million silver, also does make a lot of sense, since back in the day, these boxes were sold for 100 million silver each on the Pearl store during events, and silver event boxes always give slightly less than how much you pay for. However, these accessories and items you can get from these boxes have gone down by quite a lot since then, so the current average of 39 to 78 million silver makes a lot of sense. Life boxes were also always a lot better than Combat boxes on average. We finally have the Mystery box, which was a mix of the two Shakatu's boxes, and its value is on average about 44 million silver per box. Still better than the Combat box, but worse than the Life box. I will say that for all these boxes that used to contain hard black crystal shards, we simply combine those rates with the current sharp black crystal shards rates, and change the value to the value of the current sharp black crystal shards. We don't necessarily know if PA simply combined the rates of the sharps and hards, or distributed the rates of the hards to all items, but this is just how we calculated it. Moving on, now we have the unknown boxes that we mentioned earlier that we will need to use less conventional means to value. We have the Shakatu's Dream box and Shakatu's Splendid box. The Shakatu Splendid box was an older box, so it is possible that the rates were released sometime in the past, but we currently don't have access to those rates. That being said though, we can do quite a good guess using the value of the Shakatu's Resplendent box that we calculated earlier. We know that the buy price of the Shakatu Splendid box was 300 million silver back when it was released in 2022. We also know for these RNG boxes, they generally make it so that on average you get around the same amount of silver out in terms of items than you put in buying the box. So we can assume that back in the day, you would get around 300 million silver worth of items from this RNG box. We also know that much like the Shakatu's Resplendent box, the value of these items and accessories have gone down about 30% since then. With that, we can assume that this box is likely worth about 210 million silver with the current day market prices, and thus worth about 21 million silver per Shakatu Surety. I will of course say that the value we calculated here is a lot less certain than the previous boxes, but it is the best guess I can do based on the information that I have. Moving on to the Shakatu's Dream box, this box has even less data as it's a new box that hasn't been sold for silver yet as far as I know. Because of this, we don't have a baseline silver value to value this item. However, we do know that it costs 10 Shakatu Sureties, so it can be compared to the other items like the Splendid and Resplendent Shakatu's boxes. These boxes were sold for 300 and 500 million silver in the past. If we compare this box to the Shakatu's Resplendent box, we can see that there are a lot more higher value items that you can obtain from the new Shakatu's Dream box, like Pen and Tet Black Star weapons. However, the lower value items are the ones that you're going to be obtaining most of the times and take up a lot of the contribution, such as crons and memory fragments. Since you will be obtaining the lower end items 70 to 80% of the time, in the Shakatu's Dream box, the lower value items are actually a lot less than the Shakatu's Resplendent box. For example, you have a chance of getting 50 crons or even 100 crons, which is much less than the minimum 180 crons you can get from the Resplendent box. You also get 50 memory fragments instead of 100, and 100 ancient spirit dust instead of 500. In fact, a lot of the lower value items are more comparable to the cheaper 300 million Shakatu Splendid box. Because the lower value items generally are most of the contribution, we can assume that on average the value of this box is going to be lower than the Resplendent box and more close to the Splendid box. Because of this, we valued this box at a clean 300 million silver, which was the old sell price of the Shakatu Splendid box. We can assume that since PA made this box with the current silver value on the central market, the value wouldn't have depreciated as much. This would make the average silver per seal to be 30 million silver for the new Shakatu's Dream box. Again, since this is a newer RNG box with no solid rates, the actual value of this box is completely unknown. This is just the best guess that we can currently do. But with all of that, we have all the items' silver value along with a silver per surety. If you're looking at it in a pure silver calculation, you would definitely prioritize the higher value items first, given the amount of sureties that you can manage to get during the event. Of course, the 200 stack is a complete no-brainer, and some of the higher stacks and premium outfit boxes are pretty good silver value per surety. However, the next part of this video, we'll talk about the caveats for some specific items that you may want to think about. The big caveats that most people are thinking about is going to be the 100 Radiant Shakatu seals. Because these seals can be traded in for an exclusive title, people may ignore the silver value. Do keep in mind though that each one seal is worth 5 sureties, so if you trade in all 100, you'll be spending 500 sureties instantly. I myself thought it was 5 sureties for 5 seals initially, since that's always been the denominator that they have been given out as, but found out it was only 5 sureties for 1 seal. The next caveat is the Noble Stature chest. This item gives Flower of Oblivions and Royal Fern roots that were not included in the silver calculation. However, if you haven't gotten all the T10 horses, or may go for horses in the future, the value of the Flower of Oblivions is actually quite high, as they take a lot of time to get from horse training. I would say that with the Flower of Oblivions and Royal Fern roots value estimated, this box would be more close to about 1 billion silver value and definitely worth picking up over the other RNG boxes. The final caveat I will put is that even though some of these stacks may have a lower silver value, that is a guaranteed item over the RNG boxes. I would almost always take the 120 stack and 150 stack over a Resplendent Shakatu box, since I will be guaranteed that silver value with no RNG tied to it. On top of all of that, most players may value stacks even higher than I put in this sheet, so the stacks should definitely be prioritized over the RNG boxes. With the caveats out of the way, how would I recommend most players use their Shakatu sureties? Well, first of all, the 200 stack is a complete no-brainer, and everyone should be getting that. Even if we assume it's 5 sureties instead of 1, if we aren't going to be getting any extra sureties from grinding, it would still be better than all other items. The next big question is if you need the Shakatu seal for the title. Because this event gives 100 seals for logging in, and you would likely already have some seals, you may not need to buy the 100 additional seals from the shop to get the title. The title is also a pretty basic yellow title as shown here, so it's not anything crazy. Keep in mind that the value of each seal past 300 is going to be around 6 million per surety, which is pretty low compared to the other items. After the 200 stack and seals, it's pretty much just going to be the 150 stack, premium outfit box, 120 stack, and noble stature chest if you're doing the T10 horses. The 120 stack may not be as high value silver per surety, but it is a guaranteed pretty decent stack with no RNG. Finally, onto the boxes, we pretty much just followed the silver per surety. Resplendent box is gonna be the best of the 10 sureties, however the dream box is a new box so it could be fun to get even though it may be slightly less silver. After that, the Splendid box is definitely the worst of the 3 10 surety boxes, but a lot better than the 5 surety boxes. For the last 3 boxes, prioritize life, then mystery, and finally combat Shakatu boxes. For people that already have the 300 sealed title, or don't really want to get the title, then just buy out everything from the store and use your remaining sureties on the Shakatu seals. But that's basically the prioritization. Do keep in mind that you can get Shakatu sureties from grinding within the next 2 weeks, so if you did miss a couple of logins, this is one way you can make up for them. You can also get extra sureties to buy out the entire store and not have to make any sacrifices if you grind a lot, but that'll definitely take some time. You can't get these from AFK fishing, so you will have to actively play the game. Other than that though, do remember that on top of the 100 seals you can exchange in the shop, you get 100 more Radiant Shakatu seals just from logging in, so that is a very nice bonus, and might be all you need to get the 300 Shining Knight title. But that's basically it for this video. A very nice event with a ton of rewards just by logging in for an hour, so definitely worth the time. Most of these items are also super fun since they are RNG boxes, so for most players, this will be a good and fun BDO event. I do hope to make more of these videos in the future, but they will really be reliant on the events that BDO makes. Either way though, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time.